The Tar Heels lost to the reigning national champions inside Madison Square Garden on Tuesday night. But rather than hang their heads, it's just another reminder of how close Carolina is.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, December 6, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you everydayers for joining us to get your Tar Heels content every single day. If you're a guest, welcome in. We're so glad you're here too. If any of you would like to be a bigger part of the Locked On Tar Heels community, we got a great Discord channel going on where we're talking Carolina stuff all the time. Come join us. The link is in the show notes. Coming up on the show today, I want to talk about this game against UConn on Tuesday night. We're going to talk about Coach Davis's response to it. That was quite a bit different than I expected. We're going to talk about our Four Corners recap and the Shady stat of the game. But here's where I want to start. Carolina just went into UConn's own neighborhood and played them really tough. I'm not ready to say they went toe-to-toe because you can't quite go that far after an 11-point loss. But you can say that Carolina is so close. I mean, you saw it in this game if you watched it. There were just so many moments where it's like, man, if Carolina could just take this one next step. They're just right there with one of the teams that right now appears poised to be ready to win a national championship this season. That's how close Carolina is. Are they right there? Not yet. They are not quite in that elite of the elite company. But this is a very, very good North Carolina team, and we saw another data point in our learning of the Tar Heels this year. We got another chapter in this book of writing the 23-24 season, and it is a good book. The result of this game honestly says a lot about Carolina's place in the national standing. UConn 100% can defend their title. They are a top 5, at worst top 10 college basketball team this season. And this is in a game they were banged up, right? Like they got multiple guys just kind of struggling with a few ailments right now. But on the Carolina side of things, because that's what we care more about, Carolina is at worst a top 20 team. I fully think that even right now with where they're at, they are legitimately a top 15-ish team, somewhere in that 11 to 15 range. That's what the Tar Heels are. Now, they're not going to sit on that and just be like, all right, fine, cool, that's where we're at. No, it's like, what do we got to do to get to where UConn is? What are the things in between where we are right now and what we saw on Tuesday night from UConn, and how do we close that gap? That's the kind of conversations we're having right now. Not, oh boy, like if we get lucky, we might beat a ranked team at some point. It's not that. That's not where this Tar Heel team is at. We're having different conversations this year than we have in the last couple years. Coach Danny Hurley said as much in his own post-game conference. I watched it. Talked about how good Carolina is. Alex Caravan was agreeing and like, man, this is a phenomenal team that we beat on Tuesday night. And they attributed a lot of what prepared them for this game to their game at Kansas. And so, maybe this game even turns out differently if UConn hadn't just played Kansas. Carolina not only has UConn's attention, they have the attention of the nation in a good way. Now, while Carolina, I'm saying they didn't go toe-to-toe with UConn, they were in this game for much of it. They never went away. They kept responding. At one point in the first half, UConn get out to this 7-point lead. And I don't know if you were feeling it. I was. The moment that we've seen in the past couple years where Carolina is wont in those moments to let that lead balloon out to 10, 12, 15 points. And it's like, what are we doing? This game is over 10 minutes in. Not so on Tuesday night. Carolina looked at that 7-point lead and they went on their own 7-0 run to tie the game right back up. In the second half, man, UConn came out gunning. They're not known as a 3-point shooting team this year, but man, they were, I think, 4 for 4 from 3 to start the second half. And Carolina just kept on pushing. They got it back within as few as a 5-point deficit one more time and just couldn't ever close beyond that. It was 65-60. Carolina had the ball with a chance to cut it to 2 or 3. In fact, RJ got a great look at 3, would have cut it to 2. And even on the next possession, because they stopped UConn from scoring at that point and had another possession where Harrison had a layup and he just missed it. And a couple possessions later, Carolina was down 6, had a couple point blank shots from in close and just couldn't get it to fall. Part of that, look, I know we're all going to probably want to say like, oh man, Carolina offense got to get that in. Look, you got to take UConn into account in that situation. They're so long and big and elite at 2-point defense. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I was so proud of the fight of the Tar Heels yet again. I was proud of the moxie when things got chippy in the first half. I love Mondo being like, come on, let's go. Like, speaking of which, though, Cam Spencer, this dude is on my list. I think, he's not Ethan Rogge of Creighton level, but I think we all have Cam Spencer's name on our list. He is not on good terms with Tar Heel Nation right now. I got no kind of time for that Bush League energy that he was bringing. He just felt like he was being an instigator. Now, to be fair, I think part of why that bothered me is he's a great basketball player. He doesn't need to be a tool like that. He can be a good dude and just doesn't need it. But I am this level of petty, and I was here for that action when he got teed up. So that's where I'm at. Part of Carolina's tough night in terms of being able to get over the hump is that I said it on Tuesday's show, but they're just a tough matchup for Carolina. They've got the size, they've got the length at multiple positions. You've got Donovan Clingan, that's 7'2". You got Tristan Newton, that's 6'5", and RJ's working on trying to guard him. That's what Carolina's trying to do. And they did a good job with some of these guys. Clingan didn't have a crazy game by his standard. Like they did some really good things. But it's just a tough matchup from UConn. But you've seen now that even with a tough matchup like this, you can hang. You've seen that perhaps you're not in that same elite stratosphere, but you've seen what it looks like. And again, you know what you need to do now to get there. Carolina belonged in this game. I wrote this before the game even started. I'm not sure how the game turns out, but through the first 10 minutes, Carolina belongs in this conversation with the reigning national champions. 100% they do. They weren't outclassed. It wasn't an issue of talent. The result of this game is that Carolina is going to continue to put themselves on the national radar. I mean, more so had they won. Sure, great, absolutely. But they will not be overlooked. This is something else I wrote before the game because I wanted to make sure that even if Carolina lost, I said this and I believed it, and I really do. I said, win or lose, this is a point to make. During football season, we discussed how you felt differently about losing at Clemson because you hadn't taken care of business against Virginia or Georgia Tech. Those two losses made that Clemson game and then that NC State game games that you felt like we absolutely have to win for this season to be successful. However, had you beaten Virginia and Georgia Tech, you take that L at Clemson and just say, look, they've grown a ton over the season. It is what it is. The basketball team is in an opposite position. Yes, they lost to Villanova, but then they beat Arkansas, then they beat Tennessee, and they had that solid win against Florida State. So they've done some things in non-con where it's like, man, you would have loved to have won this game against UConn, but you didn't feel the pressure that you had to. Now, that said, you've still got Kentucky and you've still got Oklahoma. Both games that you feel like you can win. And for me, Carolina needs to go 1-1 in those two games to feel really good about where they're at heading into ACC play. Not forgetting there's also a game against Charleston Southern to wrap up non-con play. But I'd like to see the Tar Heels at least go 1-1 in those two games. Folks, do not just be like, oh, it's Oklahoma, whatever, Walker. No. This team is undefeated. They blitzed Providence on Tuesday night. They're a really, really good basketball team. So I'm doing that. And the good news is now you've got like 10 days before you play Kentucky next Saturday in the CBS Sports Classic in Atlanta. So that means you can get things healed up. Like Cormac Ryan struggled, man. He just, poor guy. Like, I know you're frustrated about Cormac Ryan's inability to shoot. There is no one more frustrated than Cormac Ryan himself. I think a lot of that is your shot struggles when you have inability to get your usual lift on your shot. What's his ailment? A bum ankle. That's just what it is right now. This layoff is going to give him time to get his feet back up under him. But it's also going to give the Tar Heels time as a team. What are you going to work on? What are you going to get better at? What did you learn from playing one of the top 4 teams in the nation on Tuesday night that now you can take on as a team, Tar Heels, and work at getting yourselves there? So, were there things that need to be corrected? Absolutely. Was the game perfect? By no means. But does Carolina have a big opportunity to hang with the elite teams in the nation, and not only hang, but be one of those? Yeah, they've got that opportunity in front of them. Now they just got to do the things to go grab it. I want to say some more about these two elite offenses going up against each other and which defense was able to do more with it. We're going to have that conversation here in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by Jace Medical. Look, I know we come to sports to escape some of the crazy realities of life, but I do want to talk about real life for just a second and getting prepared. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics, and right in the middle of the worst flu season that we've had in over a decade. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if somebody, myself or someone I love, getting sick while supply chain issues stop you from getting that medication that you need. And that's where Jace Medical steps in. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of illnesses, things like respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, and more. And honestly, these kind of things can happen to any of us. So if you want some help with that, visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than right now. So you can get that level of preparation by going to jacemedical.com and using offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Again, that's $20 off your order with code LOCKEDON at jacemedical.com. North Carolina, UConn. This was 2 elite offenses going at it in Madison Square Garden on Tuesday night after a great FAU-Illinois game that Illinois pulled out right before that. Now, I've gone ahead and looked at Ken Palm's refresh after the game, and UConn is still holding strong at number 3 in offensive efficiency in the nation. Carolina dropped a couple spots to 7 from 5, but still 2 of the top 7 offenses at Ken Palm right now. And I say this to say, one of the hot takes people are going to try to throw at you from this game is that Carolina's defense was exposed in this game, that Carolina's defense is not up to snuff. And sure, there are things to work on with the defense. There were too many wide open looks at 3 with Carolina just not getting out on shooters, things like that. But here's the truth of the matter. If Carolina's defense was exposed in this game, if you're going to accept that as true, then you need to accept this as true. UConn is going to expose everyone's defense because that is how good this UConn Huskies offense is. They are efficient and they are balanced and they are lethal. They know exactly what they're doing, and defending it is incredibly, incredibly hard. So again, if Carolina's defense is a fraud, then so's whatever other team you're watching UConn play, because that's their capability. This is about UConn, is what you saw. We're going to talk more about the job Carolina did on Donovan Clingan here in a little bit, but in more detail anyway. But what I want to say is, as an example of this UConn offense doing what they need to do, Carolina limited Donovan Clingan. They did a great job, frankly, with that. But meanwhile, Cam Spencer's dropping 23, Alex Caravan 18, Tristan Newton 14, Solomon Ball 13. Like they've just got all these dudes that can beat you in a multitude of ways. So was Carolina perfect defensively? No. There's plenty to work on. But these things are going to come. There are literally no other teams Carolina will face that is this level of offensive efficiency. Who's number 1 and 2? Number 1 is Baylor. Number 2 is Alabama. Carolina is not playing them. As I look down the list, Kentucky, they're 10th at offensive efficiency. So right in Carolina's neighborhood as well. That's going to be a great test coming up for Carolina of what did you learn from the UConn thing. But this is the best offense the Tar Heels will face all year. Just hear me say that and know it. So anything that looked exposed from Carolina's defense, what are you going to do? Now I know you want to grow and you want to be that level of competitive, and the Carolina Tar Heels are going to get there. But on the other side of it, here's the other issue. As we watched Carolina's offense, I think there was frustration of like, man, they're missing shots that they should be hitting. Now, from outside, yeah, you know, if you're Cormac Ryan, again, you're still super frustrated in your inability to connect from outside right now. But some of these inside shots that just weren't falling. Dude, Donovan Clingan is 7'2". All these other guys, like there's just height advantages, and we talked about these yesterday, but UConn had height advantages across the board. So it's not just like me going in against my son Paxton, who's 8 years old, and just getting layup after layup over him. Carolina's going into the lane with really big dudes in there looking to bother all their shots. Because the fact of the matter is, while UConn's offense is like elite, their defense is also elite. It's just not quite as elite. They're 16th in the nation in defensive efficiency at KenPom. So on the offensive side, Carolina was going to have some struggles there as well. And I know it's easy for us, me included, to sit on the couch and critique like, man, I could hit that layup. No, I couldn't. The way these dudes are bothering these shots, it's different. It's just different to try to get everything to fall consistently over that much height and length. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that it's not frustrating to cut it to 5 and then not be able to hit that 3, or Harrison get that layup to cut it down further. And especially coming off a game against FSU where you got all that momentum, cut it to 5, and you just kept going until you were up by double digits. The Tar Heels weren't able to do that in this game because UConn is an infinitely better team than Florida State is. With all due respect to Leonard Hamilton's team, it's just true. UConn is phenomenal. And Carolina couldn't work out of the same type of hole that they were in on Saturday. So the thing is, UConn is elite at 2-point offense and defense. Their 2-point field goal percentage on offense is second in the nation, 64.1%. They're 12th in 2-point field goal defense, only allowing opponents 41.5% on 2-point field goals. It's insane. That's just what you're dealing with in this one. Now, here's the thing. There are no moral victories, right? At the same time as I'm just trying to help frame up why this was such a difficult game. At the same time, if you didn't win, you didn't win. That's an L, and Carolina's 7-2 now. But I was oddly surprised to hear Coach Davis. I even said at one point on Tuesday's show, like, Coach Pack and I were talking about moral victories, and I said, here's the thing. Coach Davis, after the game, if Carolina loses, is not going to be talking about being okay with moral victories. He's going to be super angry that they lost. Interestingly, yes, Coach Davis was upset with the loss, but he was encouraged by what he saw from his team. And that is a good sign to me that it's like, hey, we're right there. We're right there. I was surprised at how encouraged he was. Typically, he'd be down in that moment. So this tells me something about what he's seeing and where he thinks his team is at. In fact, he said, quote, "I'm upset that we lost, but it's 8 games in, now 9 after UConn, and it's encouraging from my standpoint how much we can get better and how much we can grow," end quote. So it's not like, hey, we were at our ceiling tonight and it still wasn't enough, right? You get that? It's like, hey, we did some really good things, but we recognize areas and dimensions in our basketball team that can grow to help us reach our ceiling that might be a higher ceiling than UConn's. I don't know. But here's the deal. Right now, it's early December. We are not playing for early December. We are playing for February and March because you'll want to be peaking then. Now, at the same time, you want to win these games now because these are resume builders. But you can't complain about losing to the number 4 team in the nation. You can't complain about being in the game with them and competing well and hard. I'm encouraged by that. All right, we got to get to our 4 corners recap and the Shady stat of the game. We're going to hit those in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. It's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on that action than right now. Their app is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options from player props to over-unders and more. Or how about this one? ACC regular season champion. Let's bring it back home to the conference, which may or may not continue to last. Duke is at plus 190 right now. Tar Heels plus 340, Miami and Virginia plus 470, and Clemson plus 1,000. I think several of those numbers are going to be moving because Clemson, they look legit to me. So if you want to get in on any of that action, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get in on the action this NFL and NCAA season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, 4 corners recap. Here we go. What I want to do is actually look at the 4 corners preview and answer all those things with one caveat. The third one was actually the 2 elite offenses that we just talked about. So we're going to skip that one. And I've added in a different conversation. So number 1 on the 4 corners recap is free throw shooting. We talked yesterday about this being a potential big weapon and big opportunity for Carolina to win at the free throw line. We talked about what an advantage it could be. It wasn't. Unfortunately, Carolina had what was probably their worst free throw performance of the season. They got there well. They got the attempts, 22 of them, but they only hit 13 of their shots, missing 9. That's good for 59%. That's not going to cut it in an elite high-level basketball game. Now, UConn didn't shoot well either from the free throw line, which means all the more so. It was a golden opportunity for Carolina that they just couldn't grab a hold of. Because as a reminder, they're shooting coming into this game 77.4% from 3. That gives you 4 more makes out of the 22 shots you made, which changes an 11-point deficit into a 7-point deficit. And that helps put some real game. There's just something about getting into single digits that helps put that game pressure on. So if Carolina had been able to do that, just make even 4 more free throws, we might be talking a little bit differently now. So Carolina is going to have to regroup, get back to the line. Armando didn't shoot quite the level he has been this year. I think that was a big part of it. Of the 9 free throws that were missed, let me get back to my data here. 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 9 were him. And so, I mean, that's just, it is what it is with that. You know, you gotta, as with everything we've been talking about today, you got to learn from it and you got to move on because that's what you do. You move on to another game. I'm sorry. 5 of the 9 were Armando. He was 5 of 10 from the free throw line. So no bueno there. All right. Second, in the 4 corners recap, the second thing we talked about in our 4 corners preview was the Armando Bacot versus Donovan Clingan matchup. We have seen that Armando has struggled at times in his career with bigger dudes with length, like Donovan Clingan. And so we asked us, how effective will he be? Well, interestingly, it felt out of the gate like it was like, oh man, maybe a different day, a different story for Armando here. And then getting some points right out of the gate in the second half too. But outside of that, Armando was shut down as the game wore on. Now, what I thought he did best and what I thought Carolina did best was getting him the ball very intentionally, a lot in the first half and early in the second. He was able to go at Donovan Clingan and at Johnson, Clingan's backup, to get both of them in foul trouble. Clingan had his first foul early in the first half and then had to go to the bench with 2 with about 6 and change left in the first half. Armando got 2 fouls on Johnson as well in the first half. And then the Tar Heels went right back at Clingan in the second half, and he had to go immediately to the bench with his third foul. So I loved that. They were able to mitigate what Donovan Clingan was able to do in his minutes. But Armando wasn't really able to take advantage of that. Yes, he finished with a double-double. I hear you screaming that into your computer. 13 points, but it was 4 of 12 shooting. That's just not efficient enough for Armando. 13 rebounds. We'll take, I'm great with where he was at rebounding. In fact, we'll talk more about rebounding in a little bit, but 5 offensive rebounds, 8 defensive rebounds. Great stuff. Let's also mention, while Armando wasn't able to do everything offensively efficiently that we would like, he did have 5 assists in this game and just 1 turnover and a block. So really encouraged by that side of it. It's just the offensive efficiency wasn't quite there at the level you'd like it. But so in some respects, in the Bacot versus Clingan matchup, homie held his own in a good way. I think the biggest con in that column was just the offensive efficiency. So we'll call that a push. Number 3, rebounding. Let's talk about that at the team level, not just the Armando level. We looked at coming in, and Coach Davis said both in his press conference on Monday before the game and in his post-game press conference after the game, talked again about the critical importance of the rebounding battle. Carolina lost the rebounding battle to UConn by 10, 43-33. Now, you recall me talking about the Tar Heels have had double-digit offensive rebounds in every game this season. That side of it was borne out to be true. They had exactly 10 in this game, 23 defensive rebounds. So they keep that streak alive, although obviously the bigger thing is to look at offensive rebounding percentage, not just total numbers. And I haven't gone through and done all my post-game data yet that I typically do just because this game was so late. And so I'll work on that on probably on Wednesday during the day. And then if there's any data that we need to get to, we can talk about that. But some of the things that I noticed, and let me combine that with some of the things that Coach Davis said. UConn was just faster and better to the ball. Carolina just in general needs to fight more on the glass. And this is not just a theme of the UConn game. We've seen multiple times where there's a ball just kind of bouncing around, waiting for someone to pick it up a couple of times this season, rather than the Tar Heels attacking that aggressively. So part of this is Carolina's got to box out better. They've got to make, this is one of the things Coach Davis talked about, got to make more contact. Go find your guy, put your butt on him and root him out so that you or one of your teammates is the one who can get the ball. And Coach also talked about getting to those loose balls, as I was just saying. He was talking about second tips. If the ball is touched again, you got to go snag it. Carolina has had some trouble, and you saw it in this UConn game, getting to that kind of ball. All right. Fourth part of the Four Corners recap. We got to talk about this Cam Spencer Armando Bacot spat. Specifically, it is ridiculous that Armando Bacot was teed up in this game. He had that phenomenal tip dunk off a missed free throw. I think it was from Harrison Ingram. And then was just chirping at nobody in particular. Not Johnson, whom he rooted out of the way. He wasn't degrading him. He wasn't saying anything to him. He was just yelling and pumped and excited. But yet the problem is that because Cam Spencer from UConn had been running his mouth kind of like a jerk on the possession beforehand when he had, Armando's trying to take the ball out, Spencer takes it out of his hand. It was that whole thing. So the refs are on high alert because of that, and because Coach Danny Hurley had been in their ear, that as soon as Mondo starts chirping, even though he's just kind of more like, yeah, look at that incredible play I just had, he gets teed up. That to me was completely inappropriate from the refs. I'm sorry that you're trying to get this game in gear because you didn't do what you needed to when it was UConn doing that, but do not go, making this on Armando because you didn't take care of it earlier. Now, thankfully, they did make amends for that, and Cam Spencer got his own tee later, as we said, and I was very happy about that. But Armando getting teed up in this game was, I'm going to use the word inappropriate. That was fully adjudicated by the refs, and that's got to be fixed. You can't try to capture the game back in such a way that you're saddling someone with a foul that could potentially change the tenor of the game later on. No, do better, refs, please. All right, Shady's stat of the game to wrap things up. We're just going to keep talking about RJ Davis, right? I know there's been some ups and downs in some of the conversation today, but let's end on just a big fat high note. I was worried about RJ's ability to score in this game because of the size mismatches. I was like, this is one of those where he's probably going to be spending a lot of time with Tristan Newton, who's 6'5", and RJ's 6 foot flat. And for a while, it looked like that was the case, that they were going to be able to hold him down. Had some points in the first half, but it was a quiet first half. But in the second half, homie opened up the floodgates and let it roll. This is now, so here's our Shady stat. 4 straight games for RJ Davis with 25 or more points. He's got 5 straight games of 20 or more points. And in Carolina's 9 total games, he's scored 20 or more in 6 of them. Good grief. What RJ Davis is doing is next level. And I just love that he's coming out here and proving, any slights that have been dealt his way. He's saying, keep bringing them and I'm going to keep knocking them down. And I love it. By the way, from the free throw line, while Carolina as a team might have struggled, RJ was 6 of 6 and has now made 33 straight free throws. The last one he missed was against Villanova in early in the second half. Since then, he has been perfect. And he's shooting this season 95.3%. That means that the guy that was already the leading career free throw shooter in Carolina history by percentage has bumped his 85% career percentage up by 1.2 percentage points to 86.2. That's how ridiculous what he's doing is. RJ Davis is on another level. Please do not miss it. And please, I hope that this 10-day layoff does not stop what he's doing and that he keeps bringing it against Kentucky. And they got a whole bunch of good guards. So I'm excited for that game. All right, folks. Obviously sad to lose this game. But again, you feel good at some level about Carolina's fight and what you see from them and knowing that they're so close and that they can get there. They have not tapped into their full ceiling, but that is the growth and the maturation process of a season. And that's a fun journey to go on, right? So buckle up and let's enjoy that together. By the way, if you want to talk more about it, again, come join our Discord. The link is in the show notes. We'd love to have you. We'd love to chat. Always going on. You can also email the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen or watch. It really does help the show when people can see why you enjoy it so much. Also, don't forget to subscribe on video and audio formats. Would love for you to smash the like button if you're watching, because that helps as well. And would love to hear your thoughts and takeaways from this game. Hey, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel, even the day after loss. I really do believe that. We'll talk to you again tomorrow on Thursday, but until then, peace.